them back on.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Jo has just disappeared to put her glasses back on. Brilliant. Here we are. Thank you guys for joining us again. I hope you maybe had a chance to grab a cup of tea or go for a little walk in the break. Do say hello in the chat box. For anybody who hasn't been on the calls this morning or earlier on, there's a chat box there on the right hand side, so you can chat away to each other in there, share. We've been sharing links and all that kind of thing, and that chat stays there for the replay as well. So if you want to come back and find any links or pick up on anything, you can come back and find all that on the replay. And what else was I going to say? Oh, if you want to ask a question, there's an ask a question button at the bottom of the screen, and if you click on that, it just means that we can make sure that we get to your questions at the end, and that they don't get lost in the chat. So let's kick off by getting our lovely panel to introduce themselves. I'm really aware that we don't have gender balanced panels, but that's one of our is the sort of gender imbalance we seem to have around some of the sustainability issues. So Claire, if you want to kick off by introducing yourself, that would be awesome.
Hello, I'm Claire. I'm Zero Waste Maman, called that because I grew up in Paris. I can see lots of plastic frees on the little comments box. So I'm also a regional rep for Surfers Against Sewage, and I'm the lead for a campaign called Plastic Free Seaford, which they are community campaigns designed by Surfers Against Sewage to help your community get rid of single-use plastics. So I live on the beach, near the beach, so was primarily takeaway stuff, and that's what I do. I've got 2 little children, which is why I'm a maman, and yeah, together we're the musketeers trying to rid the world of single-use plastic. Brilliant.
Fab. Jo, how about you?
Hi, my name is Jo. I live in Yorkshire. I'm a beach cleaner, a really joyful member of the 2 Minute Beach Clean community. And last year I paddleboard coast to coast along the canals, picking up litter and raising money for the 2 Minute Beach Clean.
Wow. And Livy, hello.
Hello. So my background, I started off getting into trying to live a plastic-free life, and then I met Natalie Fee, who started City to Sea, and was part of the team that started Refill, which is about finding alternatives to single-use plastics by creating making shops and cafes refill stations, so you can carry a reusable water bottle and go and get water. And I still work with City to Sea once a week, but also I do work with businesses, and I've got an online course around tackling single-use plastics in the workplace, because I found as a consumer, there's only so much you can do, and then it's what's available to you. So I was really interested in working with businesses to change the packaging that they're using and to change the mindset to start thinking in a very different way. So as consumers, we don't have to say, oh, I either buy this that's really expensive that's not in plastic, or this that is, and have a kind of a nightmare when we go shopping.
Brilliant. And I, the reason, you're all brilliant in your own right, but I thought it was really interesting to have 3 quite different perspectives on sort of plastics, with Claire looking at from her sort of Surfers Against Sewage and community angle, and Jo just does so much stuff individually and for 2 Minutes Beach Clean, and Livy then to have your sort of business perspective on it as well. I just thought it was really interesting. So let's just kick off, since Blue Planet 2, Claire, don't worry about the kids, they can come and sit on your knee or whatever they want to do.
Sorry.
Since Blue Planet 2, we're all so much more aware, aren't we, of no, I'm just going to mute you for 2 seconds while you're arguing. Just of plastic, single-use plastic, and how it's its effect that it has on the environment and things. But there's almost been this kind of backlash, and now there's this kind of not plastic phobia, but kind of, so is all plastic bad plastic? Is it something that, is it the devil's work? And should we be trying to eradicate, when people talk about, being plastic free, is that what we should be aiming for? Or, are there some circumstances where it's okay to be using plastic and where actually plastic is the best material to use? Livy, I don't know if you want to say anything there.
So I think one of the fundamental issues with plastic is not the material itself. It's an incredible material, but it's our use of it, and it's using something that could have last forever because of the way its structure for single use. So that's the fundamental problem. And something I heard the guy who runs TerraCycle and Loop speak last year, and he said the problem with what happened with packaging is back in the day, packaging was the ownership of the company. And so say a milk bottle, you borrowed the milk bottle and then you gave it back. And that meant that the company looked after it. And then there was a shift where packaging became the responsibility of us as consumers. And we don't want it. So we want to get rid of it. And suddenly it's all become valueless. And the recycling companies find it really hard to recycle plastic. So they don't want it. So we've got this material that's valueless, that's floating around and then literally floating around in our oceans. So we've got to change the way that it's managed across the board. That's my thought anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Claire, you were busy child.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's the word I was looking for. And we were just saying, is all plastic bad plastic? And are there some circumstances where plastic's actually kind of a good or the best material?
Oh yeah, plastic is. I mean, it's designed to last forever, isn't it? But as a mum, that's one of the reasons why I try and motivate as many mum friends and dad friends of mine is I hate how much single-use plastic is associated with childcare. And it doesn't need to be, but it's so convenient. And actually it's when you think about it, I've got 2 kids. If I'd used disposable nappies, I've never done the sum, but I can't imagine how many disposable nappies that would have been, because they have them from baby to toddler and at night.
Yeah.
So yeah, single-use plastics is my bugbear. Yeah. But now I've got my 2, they're 3.5 and 5, and they get what single-use plastic is versus not single-use, like a chair or a laptop.
Yeah. And I think that the issue of convenience has come up already quite a lot in that, we live in a society where convenience is king. And, I think one of the things that the current situation has shown us is that actually, maybe that doesn't have to be the case. Maybe it's not so inconvenient to slow down a little bit and to be slowing down our consumption and all those kinds of things. But Jo, what's your thoughts on sort of bad plastic and good plastic?
Yeah, no, I agree. My board, my plastic, my paddle, my paddleboard has plastic in it. So for me, it is that single use that one thing I noticed, we talk about how long single use can be. When I was on the canal, I would find energy drink bottles, orange, green, branded, unbranded. And so many of them were half empty. So the lifespan of that bottle, the use, it was drunk for maybe 30 seconds and thrown in the canal. That was like single, it will last for so long. And yet it was used for seconds, minutes. That is what I'm looking to work against, not the stuff that can actually enhance our lives and is needed for safety and health and stuff like that. So it's that single use, throw away. Can we find alternatives? And I think that was a great point about who owns it. When I have my milk bottle, I put it back out, and then another milk bottle comes and the milkman takes it away. And that's not the same with so much single-use plastic.
Yeah. And Livy, you might be well placed to answer this, but I know that one of the things that they've been talking about is this kind of tax the producer thing, so that the people producing the plastic are the ones, it kind of almost is their responsibility and they're taxed on that, on the plastic and that kind of thing. Do you think that's something that could work?
So currently there is already a tax on plastics, but it's very small. So what they're looking to do is extended producer responsibility. And the idea for that is then that there's more money to put into the system to manage the plastics and manage the recycling. And the other thing that I think, one of the things I think will have a bigger impact is and this was proposed in the packaging bill, I can't remember its name now, was that there's a percentage of recycled content that's got to be in materials. Now, what this means is it will drive the market, so that the producers will then want to get the plastic back to then recycle it and keep the cycle going. And this is a change in mindset, rather than saying all plastic's bad, as if it was managed properly and it stayed in the system, and then it wouldn't be entering our waterways because there would be a value for it. So that's
Yeah,
kind of
exactly
where we need to get to, but we're definitely a long way from that so far.
Yeah, and I think it's exactly that, isn't it? It's giving this rubbish a value. And you know, we found out, was it 2018, 2019, you know, about all our rubbish going, our plastic recycling going to China to be recycled and not actually being recycled, and you know, and then sending it to Malaysia and all these countries with far poorer infrastructures than we have. So why we imagine that they're going to be able to do what we can't, I'm just not entirely sure. But you know, I think that's one of the disincentives sometimes for people to recycle, is they're a bit skeptical now of like, well, is this going to be recycled? Where's it going to go?
You're making the thesis, because you've got a shrink sleeve, you've got the bottle, you've got the cap. There could be plastic inside the cap, and they've just made it impossible for people to look at recycling as a positive, the manufacturers. So Surfers Against Sewage, you've got a return to offender campaign at the moment, and they're trying to get you know, little lobbyists, basically. That's what Surfers Against Sewage, that's why I love them and they resonate, is they want us to lobby against what we don't like. So all kids love a hashtag. So getting them to hashtag return to offender.
Just and tell us about that campaign, because it's just beautifully simple, isn't it?
It is, with all of their campaigns. It's always great graphics and whatnot, but it's called Return to Offender. And it's getting the population to take pictures of litter, not to pick it up, which is hard, but got to be safe, and then tagging the company that made that bottle or that crisp packet, and asking them when they're going to tackle how much pollution that they're creating. So, you know, it's good to get people to look at a piece of litter and realise, you know, these companies are in control of the 200,000 bottles that they make a day that are plastic filled with something that can clean a copper kettle, naming no name. So, you know, it's a great campaign, and
And I think, you know, we had a panel earlier on today about everyday activism, and you know, that's a really simple piece of activism we can all do. As you say, you know, if you're out on a walk, snap a picture, tag the company and use the hashtag, and it's just a way of kind of amplifying your voice, or really getting your, you know, and when all those voices come together on that hashtag, then, you know, fingers crossed they'll start to sort of
and not looking at something litter, looking at it as a problem, you know, so not just that it's litter.
And I posted with I was tagged on one of the Surfers Against Sewage crisp packet ones, and I shared that one of the crisp packets I found on the canal was 1995. So, you know, that's older than my eldest son. And, you know, I didn't go looking for that. That was just there, and I just grabbed it, and it could have been, you know, there could have been ones even older, but it was really pretty much intact. If I'd washed it up, I could have probably reused it for a sandwich package, you know, 1995 and I found another 2000, you know, they'd last a long time. So yeah, I've been tagged and try to, when I can, just send pictures up onto the Surfers Against Sewage hashtag for that. So it's extraordinary, the things that people are finding from a long time ago.
Yes, definitely.
And all those campaigns are really working, because the return to sender with the crisp packets to walkers, that got loads of attention because all the postmen got greasy fingers. And then walkers joined up with TerraCycle to collect them in. I mean, it doesn't solve the problem, because they turn those crisp packets into watering cans, which is not a crisp packet, and we're still using raw materials. But that demonstrates to the company that people care, and that's the thing. It's got to be this bottom up, we're not happy with this, and then this top down, right, how can we do this completely differently?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting things I find about crisp packets is, have you seen the 2 farmers crisps that are
they're compostable?
And I just think, if those 2 guys, you know, as a tiny business on their own, if they can do it, why can't these, you know, why can't walkers, why can't
Convenience.
I don't know whether I could start talking about bioplastics, because that's one of my,
that's always really confusing.
My pets things. And I think one of the things for me about plastics is this thing of switching to another material without taking into consideration the impacts and the challenges of those materials. So the problem with plastic, it's hard to recycle. The problem with bioplastics is they're hard to compost, and you need to check on them. So I think with those ones, they can go in your home compost bin, but you can't put them. If you put those in your food caddy that goes out with your collection, they will be pulled out of the composting and they'll be burnt and sent for incineration. So they're not getting composted. And the challenge is we don't have all this infrastructure in place to manage these materials, which is the same problem we've got with plastics. So people are bringing these new things onto the market without consideration for the end of life. So I kind of, when people say, oh, it's compostable, like, where? Who can compost it? Does everyone have a compost bin in their garden? It's we're going back to this thing of go and do your exercise in the garden. You know, people don't. If you don't have a garden, you probably don't have a compost bin.
Yeah, so it's important if something says compostable, that it says home compostable, and then obviously that you have a compost heap that you can then put it in. That I wasn't aware that if you put it in your food waste caddy, it didn't go. It gets. Yeah. Is that the same for? You know, you can get like home compostable like liners for your food waste caddy and things like that. Do they? What happens to them?
Pulled out and burnt.
Oh, really?
Don't waste your money on them. So there's all these things. Yeah, I mean, use them if you want to have a clean bin, but some old newspaper. This is again this thing. You know, people say, oh, being green's expensive. Well, it is if you're spending £3.50 on liners. Do what we've always done. Use paper. Yeah. You know, and that's where for me it's a massive mindset shift about. And the waste hierarchy, or, you know, reduce, reuse, then recycle. It's not, you know, and composting doesn't fit into that. You know, it sits there with recycling as something, because you can't turn those materials. And that's another thing with things, you know, it's like, oh, it's compostable. But once it's composted into the ground, you've still got to make them all again from the beginning. So you're still using resources, and especially if they're made from plants, which are then, you know, it's crops. Yes, it might be a byproduct, but you're still the energy and all the resources. So, yeah, I'm very much, you know, think twice about what that material switch is.
Think about what the word is. I agree. Yeah. Can I just do a little side note? My council won't take my food caddy unless it's got a bag. It won't do newspaper. So always check on your council website. I learnt the hard way. So now I work with the council because of all the community work I do. We talk to each other because they want the message that isn't getting out to the communities. So I try and champion that.
It's so confusing.
Well, in some cases, they've told people to use plastic bags, normal plastic bags.
Wow.
It's crazy. There's so many mixed signals. I tell you, it's why it's
so confusing.
A nightmare out there sometimes.
Yeah. Let's look at it is confusing, but we want to focus on the positives. There's loads
of positives.
Yeah. Can you maybe each share a couple of your easiest single-use plastic swaps, and whoever's going to go last is going to be like, damn it, everyone, fun first.
I'll go last because I've spoken a lot already.
Okay, brilliant. Jo, do you want to share? You've had great success with your shampoo, haven't you?
I have. So I have tried so many shampoo bars and not really found one that I really loved. So I was using the refill shampoo from one of the refill shops I go to. But then they stopped making it, the company, and I really loved the smell. So I have started using shampoo that I found, which I bought myself, not gifted or anything like that, paid for myself from the Kind store, which is called We Are Kind Too. And I decided that lockdown would be a really good time because if it really all went wrong and my head just, you know, stuck to my hair stuck to my head, it wouldn't be a great thing. So I've really done that and it's lasted ages. And so that's like a good find for me. I use a toothpaste that's in a glass jar. And my son's got his bamboo. In fact, my son came home from uni for lockdown and he was like, oh, God, I need a new toothbrush. And I was like, wow. So he's been using the ones that I send him off to university with. So on top, that's just a simple, really simple things. And sometimes you only realize that you're not using plastic when you finish something and realize you don't have to, you're not buying anything new. Like there's nothing to throw away. I don't have a bottle to refill and there's not like an old thing that might in the past have been thrown away. So shampoo and toothpaste and just that. So I'm really happy with that. And alongside all the other refill stuff that I'm lucky enough to go and buy, my cups and my bags and all that sort of stuff. So yeah.
Brilliant. And actually Sue from Kind 2, I think, is on the call. So that's really exciting.
Wow.
And can I just say how lovely your hair is looking there as well?
Thank you. It's all the pumpkin seeds I buy. And whenever I buy pumpkin seeds, my hair just goes, I think I'm going to have a cut. But yeah, no, it's just really nice. I was really chuffed with that purchase. So
brilliant.
Yeah.
Claire, have you got a couple of easy single-use plastic-free swaps for us?
Yeah, for women, period pants. That's a no-brainer. I don't like shampoo bars. Going into the shower is my only bit of luxury when I choose them. So I like refills for that. And my other thing is, it's kind of sort of plastic swap, is I now look at all labels of clothes to make sure they're cotton, so that I'm not washing plastic into microfibers.
Tell us a little bit, because we're going to talk about hidden plastics in a minute, and obviously food, clothes is one of them. But for people who, it is still a relatively new concept that we're sort of discovering the impact of it, the microplastics from clothes. Can you just tell, for anyone who's sort of new to that, just explain that a little bit more?
If clothing, so this is made out of cotton, which is a natural fibre, and then you have other fibres, polyester, poly being the chemical bit, is when you wash them, I learned this 2 years ago from 2 Minute Beach Clean, that washes out into the ocean in tiny little microplastics. So everything I buy, from reusable makeup pads, not that I wear makeup, but it's all cotton and hopefully organic, and sometimes it just feels like your never-ending battle. Is it fair trade? Is it, have the farmers been fair, whatever? Is it British? And sometimes I've just wanted to scream, but I just do little steps. So I haven't bought new clothes for my kids for 2 or 3 years now. So it's all charity shop and it's all cotton. That's what
Yeah, and you're quite right in that it can feel really hard to, well, I'm going to buy cotton, and then it needs to be kind of organic cotton, and then really it needs to be secondhand organic cotton. And, and we were talking about this in the talk that Ray did at 10 o'clock about, your sort of values, and trying to almost have the sort of, I guess, a personal values hierarchy that, for, whether for you plastic is the top of that hierarchy, or fair trade or organic or whatever, and that you can sort of, that can help to inform the decisions that you make. But I mean, we've got synthetic stuff, an awful lot of the kids' sports stuff and all that kind of thing. But we've got a Guppy Friend bag, which looks like a pillowcase with a zip on it. And we put the synthetics in there. And I don't think it's perfect. But, it's
trying.
Say again?
It might not be perfect, but you're trying.
Yeah. And I think, that I've seen it on Kickstarter, a product that is actually a filter you can retrofit to your machine quite easily, but I don't think it's in production yet, and I think it's got halted because of coronavirus. But yeah, Livy, what are yours? Now you're sort of stuck with some at the end.
No, it's fine. I've got lots. So I would actually say, so the things that I use, so for me, thinking about habits and like how do you change those habits, you make things really easy. So the 2 things I bought when I was first going plastic free was a second-hand really good blender. So then I can make things like hummus, pestos, what did I make? Smoothies, all these things that you would normally get in plastic things from a shop. And then also a slow cooker. And I've only got a little one, but I use that to make things like curries and dal. And then I can take my own lunch. So then I'm removing the need to buy stuff because I haven't got time, because all those things make it really quick. So for me, it's always thinking about what are the barriers to those behaviors. Is it time? Is it, commitments? Is it lack of whatever? And then trying to work around it. So those are my 2. I mean, there's others, but those 2.
Yeah, go for it, Jo.
So yeah, I always like to have know where my food's coming from. So I always take my snacks with me. I did it when I was paddleboarding. Used beeswax wraps, or I've got some of my old Tupperware, which must be like 1 million years old. And I always carry a spoon, a fork, and I used to carry a knife, but then I thought probably going to London carrying a knife might not be a good thing. in my handbag, but I always have a spoon and a fork in my handbag, just in case at any point I may need to eat. And, you know, it's just always at the bottom of my handbag. And I was at a conference once, an adventure conference, and someone had gone out and she bought like a Marks and Spencer's lunchy box thing. And I was eating my own lunch that I'd kind of packed and everything. And she's like, oh, crumbs, I don't know, you know, where to eat this. And I like whipped out my spoon and I was like, here you go. I'm always there. So it's just always, like Livy's saying, it's always like thinking ahead to kind of make it so it's easier for you. So like with your water bottle, your cup on the train, so that you just tiny little things that prepare yourself so that you're not caught off guard. And sometimes we are caught off guard and sometimes it's not possible. But most of the time, if you can just kind of think ahead, like taking our own lunches or breakfasts or whatever, I just feel, you know, it makes it just works for me.
The whole fork and spoon thing, you know, you can get lovely sets of bamboo cutlery that, you know, in a special thing you can take out. But you can just grab one from your, you know, a spare one from your drawer.
Yeah.
And if you want something, try and find a little drawstring bag or something to wrap it up in, or wrap it up in a napkin or whatever. But, you know, I think that's part of obviously, you know, we live in a very consumerist society and manufacturers have cottoned onto that, and they want us, you know, they've cottoned onto the fact that everyone's wanting to be plastic free and a bit more eco-friendly. So they've made lots of plastic free and eco-friendly products. And actually, the most sustainable version of anything is the one we've already got. So let's have a look at what we've got, that first. I always say that I think one of the hardest things to tackle around plastic is food packaging, and it's so visible, isn't it? Because we unpack our supermarket shop and we're left with these bags of plastic, and I think it's the thing that people get really frustrated about. But I think it's one of the hardest things to tackle. But actually, there are quite a lot of hidden plastics that maybe we don't think of as plastics as well. So Claire's already talked about sort of plastics in clothes and things like that. Are there any other kind of hidden plastics that actually we might not think of as plastic, but we can make quite quick, easy swaps on? Livy, I'll let you go first because you went last time.
I think it's basic. I mean, it's all still around food, but actually lots of people think things like coffee cups are paper, but actually they're lined with plastic. And lots of food packaging where you go and get a takeaway and they've switched it to cardboard, but it's actually lined with plastic. So there's things like that. So that's where this material switch, no, we need to think about going to reusables. And so I think I'll just leave it with that one and see what other people have got to say.
Brilliant. Joe, have you come across any hidden plastics on your paddleboarding?
Crumbs, hidden things on the paddleboarding. I think it was just all the time the same thing, just trying to be self-sufficient so that I didn't rely on other situations. So I would, you know, I love peanut butter, and I rather than you can get peanut butter like as a little shot in a little thingy sachet, but you know, I just have I just scoop it into a little old, you know, Tupperware again from my mum, and just would take it with me because I don't, you know, they're just those tiny. I made all my own energy balls. And I made them in the weeks before I went paddleboarding, and I froze them all, and they were actually delicious. I made 120, so I made way more than I needed, and then, you know, just unfroze them. But I could just wrap them up in either a beeswax thing or put them in a little box, and they were there, and they were lovely. So all those, it wasn't like I'm like perfect about it. It was just a very simple thing, like you did when you made your oat cakes. You know, and I was like, yeah, I love oat cakes. And so it's just those simple little things where you can just to make them, not to be sort of, you know, goddess about it, but just simple things and because I'm quite frugal, it means it saves me money, you know, and now I find it much easier and I'm much more confident if I go to the shop. I don't really eat meat, but my son does. And I'll just go to the butcher and I'll just say, here, can you just fill this for me? And they, you know, a year or two ago, some of the shops were a bit like, and I just do it really confidently, really kindly, really respectfully. And they go, yeah, okay. Yeah. You know, because more people are doing that now.
Yes. Yeah. Claire,
sorry.
That's all right. Don't worry. We're Ray's just said, is that our first video bomb of the day? I think. I don't know if Samuel did one earlier. My little one, I can't remember. Yes, hidden plastics. You mentioned period pants, and we were talking earlier with Ella Dace, who does a lot of campaigning of period products, and I think that's one of the plastics we might not think about, isn't it?
Well, I didn't until 3 years ago. Just didn't occur to me. But then once you start understanding why, what plastic is, why it's put in so much stuff, that plastic's in chewing gum, that they only stopped doing the facial exfoliator with the micro makeup plastic. How do you think mascara works? It's in everything pretty much, and it's because we're letting it. So what I try and teach my little children is the choices we've got. So if they, for example, want a sweetie, slightly going off topic a bit, but if they want, it's about choices. So if they want sweets, I'd rather have something that, I look for. Palm oil is one of my things I hate, for a lot of reasons. But yeah, what else is in plastic? Yeah, basically makeup, which I don't really wear anymore, and the period products, and nappies. When you think all the things that you use for convenience to put against the most sensitive part of your child or your anatomy, it's got plastic in it.
And white as well.
I never used that. So it still makes me cross when I see wet wipes being used, even ones that have only water. It's all brainwashing, greenwashing, unconscious consumerism.
Can I just say on the period products, it's menstrual products, is that it's not just the pads, it's actually non-applicator tampons that they use a very thin layer of polyester to help for them to be inserted. So it's not just the wrapping that they use.
I find loads of applicators when I beach clean, and I've been it's been very nice. The local museum, the Martello Tower Museum, have asked me to do a curation of what I find on beach cleans, and tampons will be part of it.
Oh,
and a crisp packet from 1992 from America.
Well, you've beaten Joe. Joe's was 95.
Amazing. Yeah, when I started following Ella, I mean, I'm quite lucky because I don't need any period products anymore. Yay. So that's one benefit of getting a bit older. But when I started following Ella on it, I thought to myself, God, the number of years that I did, most women my age, 40 years worth, except maybe the times we were pregnant and all that stuff. It's just huge. And I think that's why I'm such a big fan of Ella's, because I kind of can't do anything about my past. That's happened. I can't change that. But, just supporting people who are trying to make a difference in the future is, really important, because it's such a key thing for women. If we can make them, because not everybody may want a moon cup, some people just don't. And so the more that we can, I think it's about making everyday choices that are easier for people, so that it becomes a normalized thing rather than a bit of a sort of, oh, you're a bit different. It's like making those choices so much easier. Like you say, it's not about having a few people being perfect. It's about everybody being imperfect, but more people just being able to make those choices without having to make really hard choices. It's like it's taken out, so therefore it will impact more people.
And I think the period products is almost a sort of double whammy, isn't it? Because it's we don't talk about period as a society anyway, so everybody's kind of floating around waving their period pants in your face like they would with a reusable cup. It's a very invisible thing. But I do think those taboos are starting. There's been some really, really good campaigns around that, and I know City to Sea have done a lot around menstrual products and things as well, haven't they?
Yeah, so I just give a plug to one of the campaigns. So I did the pilot of this around the behaviour change that's needed to encourage people to stop flushing menstrual products, and it's now been developed into a schools programme. It's called Rethink Periods, and it's available, and people can get involved in it, and you can have it come to your school. So that's a really positive thing. So that was funded by the Waitrose Plastics Pledge, but it's all about starting really young, introducing young people, and that's all young people, because the taboos are around people being funny about them, of all genders, and of who does have periods and who doesn't. It's breaking all of that down. And again, this is the thing about why do people flush things and why are they doing this? Because they're ashamed. And so we get these unsustainable behaviors, and those period product companies do it deliberately, and they were like, shh, don't talk about periods, and then they can put whatever they want in it and no one's going to talk about it. So it's really calling this stuff out.
Oh goodness. A question that Lily suggested that I think is a really one that lots of us might be wrangling with at the moment is, you know, how have things changed during the coronavirus crisis? I know a lot of people have, somebody mentioned this morning, you know, kind of lockdown guilt, and suddenly they're finding they've got a lot more stuff going to landfill. It's harder to access the plastic-free options that you might ordinarily. And then I guess how this is going to shape things moving forwards, because we were chatting just before we went live about, you know, a lot of places now aren't accepting reusable coffee cups, and Starbucks are just reopening and all those sorts of things. So, you know, I think that's going to be really interesting. Claire, have you found you got more single-use plastic during lockdown?
I took part in, so through Surfers Against Sewage, I found everyday plastic, which they did a survey last week of, I think there were about 60 of us that did the survey, and I did it. About 60 of us did it, and you know, I've never professed to be completely plastic free, but I hated how much plastic I got. But we found it quite hard to work out. You know, our local farm shop shut because it was overwhelmed with orders. But then once that goes, it's like, oh God, where do I go? And then my husband lost his job, so I've had to deal with money worries, serious money worries. So I have gone to supermarkets because it was affordable, and yes, it's in plastic, but I need to feed my kids, and we're not having a wage in the house. So coronavirus hit us in a different way, but it's been horrendous having to buy plastic. I'm so sorry. I knew this would happen.
But I also think, you know, certainly at the moment, we need to be kind to ourselves. We need to accept that, you know, we can't be perfect any of the time, but certainly at the moment we are having to make different choices than we might ordinarily like to. Livy was making the point that she's just moved. You've moved back with your mum, have you? And from Bristol, where it's like plastic-free shop central, to a more rural area without anything. Has that been quite a challenge?
I don't know. Yeah, luckily, I found some wholesale places, so I'm just buying 3 kilos of lentils, or, you know, as big a bag of raisins as I can manage, just to limit the small bags. But I think one of the interesting things about this time, I join sort of the packaging conversations that are going on within the packaging industry to see where they're going with this. And they're very much looking at this as an opportunity to reinforce the benefits of plastic and the benefits of plastic packaging because of safety and cleanliness. And that's something that we've got to really be mindful of, not allowing them to do that. They've already managed to push back a lot of the plastic banning. So the government was supposed to be banning certain single-use plastics, like what am I talking about? Cutlery and things, and they've put that on hold till next year because there was a lot of lobbying, and there was lobbying from the plastic bag community in lots of places to remove the 10p tax. So all these things, what they're doing is, you know, they're opportunist. So this is what we've got to really push against. And I think there's a real case for saying actually something like a reusable like this, actually, where you can make your own coffee in it, this could be a solution for some people post lockdown, so that you can have, you know, a nice coffee. It's filtered. It's not something from a shop, but I think what will happen is people will think when they're going into somewhere, how can I have something that's been touched the least? Right. You know, and this is where all the people are going into the supermarket and not wanting to touch the basket. So they're going to take their own bag in, or they want the new thing. So there's an opportunity for the reusables, because in theory you can say, well, just pour my coffee in here and don't touch it. It's mine. I don't want to touch anything that anyone else has touched, because you might have touched the disposable one. Or it will go the other way, where people will say, we don't want, you know, I want to know. They've been saying that, you know, you'll feel safer because your food is wrapped in plastic, which I guess the answer to the thing is if people are sneezing on it, but still, if you touch the plastic, then you've still got it on you, and it lasts for 72 hours?
Yeah.
Potentially coronavirus on plastic. But this is where we've got to, campaigners and people have got to hold of the narrative and make sure it doesn't shift a particular way, because the move towards reducing plastics is all around social norming and that the movement that's been gathered. So
yeah, and I think the changes that we've seen up until now have all been driven by consumers, haven't they? And by saying, look, we don't want that, we don't want that, we want something different. And then actually I can see how very easily there is a lot of fear around the virus and how nobody really knows how it's transmitted, and like you say, how long it lives and all that sort of thing. But I hadn't that what you said about, actually the safest thing for me is to take my own cup of tea and my own reusable mug and take that kind of hadn't occurred to me. I was but I think that could be a really kind of positive spin on it, couldn't it? Jo, had you had any thoughts sort of during lockdown as to how things have changed and how they might change?
I think as we talked about before, it's recognizing how lucky we are. So, for example, as I said, my refill shop, which had been a cafe and then just started into having refills, became a fruit and veg shop. And so for me, it was really easy. So I have a farm shop that's done really well with really little amounts of plastic around the fruit and veg, and a refill shop. But I know that I'm really lucky, so I can't say everybody should live like this because it's just not available. So you have to kind of recognize that privilege. But one thing I really recognized is that, and I thought I was quite frugal anyway. I've been a single mum for a long time, so I'm pretty frugal. But I realized that I had stopped kind of planning what we were eating, and particularly when it was just me at home. And so I was nipping to the shops here and there, and I just realized I haven't been to shops for 2 weeks and we're still fine. I'm lucky I've got a freezer and I could afford to buy enough for two of us for 2 weeks. I know all that. I'm really, really lucky to do that. But it has really made me think. And I think my food wastage has gone down because I'm like checking all the time. Have we got carrots and are they about to go off? And, so I've become much more mindful of what I've got, much more grateful and much more mindful. So I think going forward for me personally, I will be even more frugal and even more careful with what we get. And I will not be nipping to the shops because shops, I'll be thinking it through more. I hadn't even really considered what Livy said. And now I'm really like thinking, gosh, yeah, all the ways that things that might be coming back in that we try to say take your reusable, that might come back. It had not even occurred to me, but now that she said it, now I'm going to be much more alert to it.
On our guard.
Yeah, it had just never occurred to me.
PPE gloves everywhere and masks.
Yeah. And I think didn't something come out today about people needing to wear, or the advice to wear masks in shops and things like that. So I think we'll see more. Since one right, we've got some 9 questions in the box. I'm going to through them and maybe ask you. We probably won't have time for everybody to have a say on one thing, but I'll ask you to volunteer for them. So Lindsay's saying she'd love to have some information on reverse vending machines that they have in Europe. Has anybody got any experience of them? And I don't know, Livy, if that's one for you, maybe whether they actually work and what happens to the plastic and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, someone's answered this. So reverse vending machines we were supposed to be having deposit return schemes. They were going to be introduced in Scotland this year, but again, that's been pushed back. So the idea is that with those, the materials go back to the into the pot. They're clean. It's clean recycling. So then the manufacturers can then use that to make better quality materials. So again, that is a way of giving value to materials which we haven't had before, and it's all part of what's now called circular economy thinking. So the idea that you keep materials in use for as long as possible.
Brilliant. And there's a question: how do we get supermarkets to not wrap all the fruit and veg, etc., in single-use plastic? I try and buy loose products, but it is often more expensive. Claire, have you got any ideas from that and your sort of campaigning, with your campaigning hat on? Oh, let me unmute you. Hold on. There we go.
Yay. How can we get supermarkets? Well, Surfers Against Sewage did the mass unwrap kind of protest. So that's activism, leaving all the plastic at the supermarket for them to dispose of. Do you have to go to that supermarket that you know has loads of products in plastic? Would be the first thing. I don't know if you live in a city or somewhere like that. Write to the supermarket. I love a letter and I love writing and I love lobbying, and I had aspirations to be an MP, but the kids have frazzled my brain in the last year. But I would like to go into politics because, yeah, write to the supermarkets. But because food that's wrapped in plastic, you know, it's not just coming in from the UK, it's coming in from all over. I just limit my choice. If it's all in plastic, we don't have it. You know, I read a book by someone called B. Johnson, which got me started into the zero waste movement. And she's French, and I was brought up in France. So we love meals and whatnot. But she said, you know, shopping is voting with your money. If you don't buy it, they'll see trends, and that's what's important to supermarkets. So I'm harsh but fair.
Joe seems to have dropped
and
off.
It's seasonally. If just because you want an avocado in December, don't eat it per seasons. It tastes better. It's better for you. It's cheaper, and a lot of it will be UK grown, so that's better on air miles and all kinds of things. And you know, we're an island, so we should be supporting our farmers.
Yeah. Joe's dropped off. I think it says she's trying to reconnect, so we'll hope she hops back on in a minute. How engaged do you think the design community is in finding solutions for alternative materials, especially in terms of teaching in universities and colleges? Livy, that might be another one for you.
Yes, so there's lots of going on. So the Ellen MacArthur Foundation talk about the circular economy, and what they said is that 80% of waste is created at the design phase, and they've done lots of work around packaging. And there's a great course, if you are interested in this, called by Delft University, and it's called the circular packaging design. And there's lots of things going on at the moment where there's sort of a race to create new materials. So Budweiser and someone else are looking at a paper bottle that again has issues, and I'd like to say, someone else has mentioned it on the chat, that actually paper isn't always that great. Again, switching one material for the other isn't always the best option. And for a lot of these things, we need to think about systems changes and thinking about systemically, how could these things work maybe more as a scheme where you drop things off and you take them back again. And so there's lots of work going on in the design community, but that is, and with the packaging community. So like I said, they're all trying to respond, and there's something called the Plastics Pact, which is in the UK, and other ones where there's targets by 2025 that a certain amount will be reusable, recyclable and compostable. So there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes to make changes.
Brilliant. And a question from Nicola, and I think from what she was saying earlier, it's not actually Nicola, it's Nicola's 10-year-old daughter, and it's a brilliant question. Is it true that there is more plastic in the sea than fish? Claire, I don't know if you want
by 2050, there will be more plastic in the sea by weight than fish, not by little fish, but by weight. So yes, but sadly, plastic is in every fish, every bird, because they mistake little bits of plastic for food. So yeah, that's why it's important to go on beach cleans and to stop it from being produced in the first place.
Yeah, and I think
that quote from Ellen MacArthur Foundation always gets misquoted. It's plastic by weight, not
yeah. And I think also, you know, that's quite a scary statistic, but I'm assuming that that's like if nothing changes. So
yeah,
you know,
I mean, there's lots of things happening in the ocean to get it out of the ocean, to suck it out by doing beach cleans. Just when I do beach cleans, I don't just throw away all the litter. I log it. I write down what I've collected. I weigh it. I've worked with the local angling association to get fishing line recycled.
Wow.
You know, I don't just, it's not like, oh, you know, because most of the 80+% of what's in the ocean is from the fishing industries, commercial and individual. So that's why we don't eat fish. If my husband wants it, then we buy local fish that's caught that day. But yeah, it's commercial fishing. They're ruining the oceans. But one thing I taught my little children and the little children I speak to is all kids think that we get oxygen from trees. Most of the oxygen we breathe is from the ocean. That's why it's so important to keep it healthy.
I love that. Thank you.
I'm the Lorax of the seas.
The Lorax of the seas. I love that. So Greg said, would it be good to mention issues around bioplastics? So we did talk about that earlier. Another great question from Nicola's daughter. How long would it take one plastic bottle to biodegrade? Livy, have you got any?
Never.
Biodegrade.
Yeah. Never, I'm afraid, because plastic isn't designed to biodegrade. They say, you see things that says 500 years or 1,000 years. Plastic doesn't biodegrade. It just breaks down into lots of little microplastics. And that's where the real problem is, because in the seas, it breaks down into lots of little bits. So it's not a biodegradable material, unfortunately. And these words are very confusing and a bit misused. And things like bioplastics, equally, they end up in the oceans. They don't biodegrade either, because they actually need to be heated to 60 degrees for 90 days. And the sea doesn't get hot enough for that. And if they become litter, they don't compost down either. They need to be in these special conditions, which is a specific kind of compost facility. So hopefully this touches on Greg's point. So again, this is where these terms are very misleading and very greenwashy. So really we have to think about how can we keep materials in use and keep using them again and again, rather than thinking of how can we dispose of them.
Yeah, brilliant. And I've just mortally offended Nicola's child because he's a boy. Sorry. I don't know why I assumed we were a girl. Many apologies. So I think this is talking about the return to offender campaign. Won't the manufacturers, e.g. Coca-Cola or Walker, say it's the person who threw it on the ground's fault? I'd love to do the photo initiative, but don't see the company taking the blame. Claire,
they don't. We've had quite a bit of stick actually about the campaign, but you've got to start somewhere. You've got to have a voice. You've got to say it's wrong, and using social media platforms is brilliant. And of course they're going to say it's down to us or whoever throwing it on the ground and making it litter, but they are the ones making it in the first place. They've made a choice to put profit over planet. So if you don't think it's going to work, that's your choice. But I have every hope and heart that campaigns like this will work, because you've got to show them out. We don't like bullies, and they're bullying the planet into being polluted.
Yeah.
And I think just to build on that, the idea is that they say, oh, it's our response. We buy this material, so then it's our responsibility. But where do we take it back to if the recycling systems don't have a use for it? They're the people who are making it. They need to take it back and take responsibility. And what's missing in capitalism and the way our manufacturing works, there's no producer responsibility. And that's what a lot of these new government initiatives, one day if they become in, are pushing, is that producers are responsible for their materials, whether it's plastic, whether it's metal, whether it's paper. And that's what we need to manage them better. So I wholly say that those materials are the responsibility of the people who produce them.
Yeah.
And who cares what they think?
A recommendation for period pants. Claire, I don't know if you're happy to share.
Oh yes, Cheeky Wipes, local company, fabulous company. Helen's been on TV and done lots of promo because she was also selling reusable loo roll.
Yeah,
stockpiling. That's where I get them, because she's local business, and that is really important to support a local business. But there's lots out there.
Yeah, there's another British brand called Wuka, WUKA, who are a British brand, so they're a good one to support as well. And you might find, there might be lots of, yay, Joe's back! Lots of local, people working from home. Lots of them will make reusable sanitary pads and things like that. So yeah,
What happened? Sorry.
That's all right, Joe. It's lovely to have you back. We're just going through the questions. And I think there was one last one. Oh, Joe, you might suggestions for takeaway containers if you're having a takeaway. Has anybody tried taking their own container along, and what do you use? Does anybody want to jump in?
We don't have
I know people. I don't do takeaways, but I have seen some on on Twitter where people.
So I've got a
them.
really nice one. What's it called? It's got a wooden lid on it.
Everybody's mics are going crazy. Go on, Joe. Sorry, what were you saying, Joe?
Yeah, I've got a box. I'll whip and get it. It's like a metal one, and I have seen some takeaways in Bradford, because I kind of follow things local to me where they will say you can bring them. I mean, this was before COVID-19, so I don't know what they'll say now. But prior to that, and it was like, you know, please bring them, and then, you know, that ripple effect. Other places said yes, do that. So, and when I've been to like adventure festivals, again, I just take like my enamel wear, and I've often gone to like the stalls and just said, look, can you in here, and really quite in the pay that.
Yeah, and I think
it's just a case of do you do that?
I was going to say, don't buy something special,
you know, and just saying, can you do it, and it would be great.
Yeah. And, you know, use the grotty Tupperware that you've already got stuck in your Tupperware drawer that you can never find the lid for, or reuse the, you know, if you have got some takeaway containers from when you had a takeaway, reuse them. Livy's saying, how does she get back on? Livy, I think you might just have to wait for because it says accepted and connecting, and I think you just have to wait for the Wi-Fi. It's been loads of
before COVID. I was working with my local Indian takeaway to see if they would take tiffin tins, which is obviously how they do it in India. But yeah, takeaway. If you're going to have a takeaway, try and take your own thing.
Yeah, brilliant. Right, I think that might have been all the questions.
Awesome.
Let's
see. I have one of these that you could take. You know, I've taken that with sandwiches and things.
Oh, brilliant!
So, or I've taken.
Oh, I've got one of those.
Got a slice of green.
Wow.
Or like my mum's old plastic Tupperware, which, you know, has lasted since the 60s.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Right, this has been absolutely brilliant. There was a bit in the chat about the NHS and, you know, the amount of single-use plastic they're using, and you know, I think that could be a whole other topic for another day. And I do think that, you know, the NHS or healthcare services are one of the places where maybe single-use plastic has revolutionized healthcare, I would say. You know, and there is a lot of work to do, and I know that there are people within the healthcare professions who are.
And healthcare isn't convenience.
Yes.
That's the key. Single-use plastic is used for convenience products. You don't choose to go to hospital out of convenience.
Yeah.
Do you? So let's.
Can I just say one thing? The last time I went to the dentist, and this was something that I saw from a really lovely woman on Instagram called Kitty Kipper, and she took her own reusable cup when she went to the dentist. So when I went to my dentist and I said, would it be okay next time I come if I brought my own stuff, you know, the bit you swill out and spit in? And I said, can I just, you know, bring my own 2-minute cup? And she's like, yeah, no problem at all. And
I did that too.
And she said she's part of like a dental group who are looking at ways to reduce plastic when it's like that. Obviously, I don't know how it's going to be now. And she recommended like bamboo, you know, those interdent flossy things, because I really need them. And I was really a little bit scared to ask in case she was like, no, but actually she was like, yeah, no, definitely. She wrote down things, and so I was really, so I know it's not the NHS and it's different, but you know, in that medical sort of profession, she was, so I've missed my dental appointment now, obviously. But when I go back, I'll still ask and see what she says. And I've got my bamboo sticks that I got from my refill shop. So
yeah,
just tiny little things.
Yeah, similarly within the veterinary profession, you know, in past life I was a vet, and I know that there's a lot of work going on, you know, within the profession to try and tackle single-use plastics, and I think there is in the medical profession as well. But like, because Libby's got chucked off, she's just shared this link for us. Her course, she's got a course called Sustainable Sidekick at her website, which is sustainablesidekicks.com. It's in the chat. quote lockdown 2020 for an online course for the workplace. So that's just a little plug. And there's a quote lockdown 2020 for a discount on her online course for the workplace. So if anybody's interested in that. Claire, do you want to let us know where we can find you on social media?
Oh, it's really inconsistent at the moment, but I've got a website, Zero Waste Maman, and on there I'm trying to do lots of meal planning because that's really important at the moment, because A, it's boring cooking all the time, but B, it's quite nice not to have any food waste. So yeah, all the socials is Zero Waste Maman.
Brilliant. And that's M-A-M-A-N, isn't it?
Can I spell it in the comments thing?
Yeah,
so.
Brilliant. Joe, and how about you? Oh, Joe, are you there? Joe, do you want to share your socials with us so we can come and find you? Oh, I don't know why Joe can't hear me.
Yes, so I am healthy, happy 50. So healthy, happy, and then 50. And I'm Twitter and Instagram. I'm not very good at Facebook. And that's my website as well. But I'm kind of rejigging all that as well. So healthy, happy 50. I'm there pretty much every day.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you so much, guys. Thank you, for giving your time and your expertise. And everybody, do go and give them a like and a follow. They've very generously given up their time for free in difficult circumstances.
Sorry about Matilda.
Oh, don't worry at all. And just, I think I mentioned this right at the start, but the whole point of this festival, of these talks, of all the information that we're sharing is that we take action. So there's loads of tips throughout this hour that we've just spent of things we can do around single-use plastic, both in terms of reducing it, but also in terms of more kind of activism-y. So we've got this events page for the festival, which I'll just share in the chat. People want to come and they want to share the change that they're going to make, because I think that and then incentivize people or gives other people ideas for what they're going to do. Then do come and share on the page. We've already got a few in there. Great. And yeah, thank you ever so much, guys. And we've got a session with Sisters Against Plastic about doing how to do a plastic diet, which is on Thursday if people want to tune in for that. And we're back I'm back at 6 with how to eat sustainably, I think. So I'm going to try and whack some tea in the oven for the kids and then be back on for 6. So thank you so much, Joe and Livy and Claire. You've been absolutely brilliant. Joe, go on. Go on, Joe.
Can I say one thing? So my little quote, which is what I always live by, which is, I can't change the world, but I can change a little bit around me. And that's sort of how I live, but it's like actions. It's like just the little bit I can do. I know we have to have big governmental and commercial and all that stuff. But right now, it's like, what can I do today in a kind way to myself when circumstances always don't apply and some people are able to do. But if I can just make one little difference each day, then, if we all did that, it does actually multiply.
Definitely. And Livy's just reminded me that she's on our behaviour change panel on Wednesday. Wednesday feels like years away yet for me. On a behaviour change panel at Wednesday at 11. So do come and join us for that as well. Yeah, I absolutely adore Joe's quote. Brilliant. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, for asking questions. And I'll catch you all later. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.